What would possess a nice Jewish girl from New England to go on a 14-day water fast? I'm Abby Haverman, host of the Intuition Incubator and the Monday Muse. In this Monday Muse series, I will share what was revealed to me by fasting, not just from food, but from all my vices for 2 weeks. What I learned about myself and maybe even what I learned about life. Thanks for coming along. Here we go. Anytime that we are forcing, pushing, or efforting, the wrong part of us is in the driver's seat of that effort. And it's going to be a harder effort, and what you're going to come up with is not going to be as good as what you would have otherwise. We've been conditioned to believe that there's something really noble about cramming every last minute of our calendar. This week I want to share what it is like to achieve things and create things from a state of flow and calm rather than pushing a boulder up a hill, by sharing a story of something that happened on the last weekend of my fast. Before I jump into it, we have been conditioned to feel like we have to produce. This makes us worthy. This is how we're supposed to be. It's happened probably since the Industrial Revolution. We've also been conditioned to believe that the only way to make something happen is hard work. That if you want something to happen, you've got to be willing to do all the hard work. And there's some truth to that, right? We can't just sit around and eat bonbons. But this idea that everything has to be really hard is kind of crazy. And we've also been conditioned to believe that somehow I'm better than you if I'm super busy. And I used to really think that the busier I am, the better I am, and the more important I am, and other people should see how busy I am. All of these things. And busyness really doesn't equate to worth, but it's one of the ways I think that we have learned to prove ourselves. And it's actually really hard for many people to stop being busy all the time because unconsciously they don't realize that their worth is attached to that busyness and that quote success, the accolades that they're getting, or what they're been conditioned to believe about what success really is. However, when we are able to create in flow, and the truth is we can do that, we can actually create tremendous success and abundance and love and all the things that we want in ease and flow. We don't have to have our nervous system all revved up all the time to do what we want to do, to get what we want to get in the world. In fact, when we do that, it just happens slower than ever. Trust me, I have sat down to record these videos and done it from that aspect, and it just is exhausting. It takes me forever. I end up deleting it. It's so stupid. And so when I take the time to calm down, drop in, say a prayer, let it be whatever it is, it goes much faster. But regardless, the point is we can be in flow rather than force. And this became really apparent to me in the last weekend of my fast. I signed up for a story challenge, this New York City story challenges. And I used to do these all the time. There's 6,000 people that enter it. And on Friday nights, you get a genre, a story genre, a character, and an action. And you have a certain amount of time to write a certain amount of words, and you have to have all of those pieces in it. And so historically, I've done weekend ones, I've done week-long ones, 1,500 words, 300 words, and this was a 400-word scary story challenge. And it was funny because I checked my email that day. I looked at my email once a day while I was on the fast. And there was an email that day. It was on a Friday, and it said, last chance to register for the Scary Story Challenge this weekend. And they send several emails, and I just usually delete them. I haven't done one of these for many, many years. And intuitively, for whatever reason, this caught my eye, and I thought, oh, you know what? This will be a great thing for me to do on my last week of the fast. It'll give me something to do. Because I was allowed to create things as long as there wasn't attached to work or, some type of goal or whatever. So I went ahead and I signed up. Now, previously when I had done these, especially in the last several that I did, there's several rounds. And so if your story ranks in the first round, which means you're in the top 15 or top 10 or top 5, depending on how big the pool is of your group for the first story, then you qualify to get the next story. But for every story that you put in, you get feedback from the judges, no matter what. And that was always interesting to me. So I've actually ranked in the first round a couple of times and been able to go on to the next round. But, these are very, very good writers. There's a lot of people doing it. But the point is, historically, I would get up in the morning on Saturday morning. I would check my email to find out what my assignment was. And then I would work furiously all weekend. I would just be like, okay, I need a premise. I needed this. I needed that. And I would just write and write and write. And I would get frustrated and I'd ask my family, what do you think? And I would write all day Saturday. And then Sunday I would write all day. And sometimes I would get the thing wouldn't even be the very last one I did. I didn't even think I submitted it until literally right at the deadline. I almost didn't even make it. But during the fast, I was so like emptied out of all of this proving and pushing and all of these things. And I really was in this space, and I talked about before in previous episodes, the trees and just is, and I don't have to be anybody. And this isn't for ranking. I'm not doing this to rank. I'm doing it because I love doing it, because this will be joyous and it'll be fun and it'll be entertaining. And maybe I'll get some feedback and I'll learn something about how to write at the end of it all. And by golly, I tell you, I didn't even check my assignment when I woke up. I think I checked it maybe a couple hours later, and I just let it sort of rattle around in my head. And then around maybe 1 o'clock, I said, oh, I feel like writing. And so I sat down and I wrote out some things and thought about it a little bit. And I asked my son, hey, what ideas come to your mind when you think of this? Because I always get good ideas when I just ask people. And then I put it away, probably at like 3 or 4 o'clock that day, and didn't look at it again until Sunday afternoon. And I opened it up and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And I made a few changes and I put it in at 3 o'clock. The deadline was midnight on Sunday. And I loved it. I was so happy with this story and I was so filled with joy. I was just like, this is so good. I really love how I did this arc and how I did this craft, and I like what I came up with. It was only a 400-word story, which can be challenging because you've got to do a lot of things in a short amount of space. But the point was I just had so much joy, and it filled me up for like a few days after that, just thinking about how fun that was and how pleased I was with what I wrote, which has nothing to do with whether or not anyone else agrees or whether or not I will rank or whether or not I will get to the next set of stories. And it was the most tremendous reminder and lesson in what is all this pushing and proving and exhausting things that I put myself through for no reason other than that my autonomic nervous system is out of whack in that moment, or the conditioning that I have. But anytime that we are forcing or pushing or efforting in that way, the wrong part of us is in the driver's seat of that effort. And it's going to be a harder effort, but more importantly, you are creating stress in your body, you're not enjoying your life as much, and that's what life is here for. We're only here for a very short period of time, and the more joy we can have, the better it is. So the question this week to ask yourself is, what is something that you're working on that you are currently facing with force and efforting and trying to think through it in logic, and how can I do this and how can I do this, that you could bring just some more flow to, that you could show up with a little less importance around it, a little less perfectionism, and a little more joy? Can you look at it like a puzzle piece? I had an episode with Radhika Dutt who talked about leading leaders and CEOs and facing team problems as puzzles, which I thought was just such a fabulous analogy. What can you choose that you're working on right now that you're just putting way too much force into, and you could actually bring a little bit of flow to it instead? And the way to do that is to really just drop down deep inside yourself and remember that we're just not that important. And nothing that we're doing is that important. And that we're actually here for something that's much more important, which is to actualize ourselves and to wake ourselves up from our sophisticated sleepwalking, from the conditioning, from the nervous system noise that drives us through our lives, and just drop into that place of deeper knowing, the place that knows, and move from there instead of what I called a few weeks ago, the blabbermouth, the one in my head that's constantly judging me, and nothing is ever enough. Love to hear in the comments what you come up with. If you liked this episode, please share it. Listen to some other episodes of this water fast. And thanks for being here.